Welcome to the Cutting Edge Health Preventing Cognitive Decline podcast. I'm Jane Rogers. Welcome back to the Cutting Edge Health Preventing Cognitive Decline podcast. This is a doozy of a podcast. I had the pleasure of interviewing Michael Greger. He is an MD, and you may recognize the name. He's very popular. He's written a lot of New York Times best-selling books, basically on how to live the lifestyle to be able to be healthy longer. And there are a ton of pearls in here. You know him. He talks so fast. There's so much to share that you can get more in his books, or also nutritionfacts.org is an organization he founded where he shares everything. Dr. Michael Greger, thank you very much for joining us today.
So happy to be here.
Oh, we're excited to have you. So your book is awesome. I've been looking through it. I've been reading it. It's called How Not to Age. And this is exactly what this audience is trying to do. We're trying to slow aging so we can prevent some of the diseases of aging. Now, you took, 400 pages to get through all that stuff there? I'd love you to summarize it, and let us know what some of the top things are that you think we should be doing.
Sure. Well, based on studies of identical twins, only about 25% of the difference in lifespan between people is due to genetics. So for what we can do to exert control over the majority of which we have some control is to look to the blue zones, these areas of exceptional longevity around the world, where more than 100 dietary surveys suggested that we should center our diets around whole plant foods. So the most important thing we can do is to eat healthier, and that means minimizing processed foods, meat, dairy, sugar, eggs, salt, while maximizing fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes like beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils, nuts and seeds, matcha, herbs, and spices, basically real food that grows out of the ground. These are our healthiest choices.
Okay, so there are also 11 pathways to aging that you discuss at length in your book. And some of those you can really have an impact without big pharma.
Yes, in fact, that's where the whole genesis of the book came about, because there was this basically a consensus document from the top anti-aging researchers in the world, funded by the pharmaceutical industry, to determine what are the key pathways of aging, so they could come up with kind of pharmacological solutions to block them. When I was looking through this paper, I was like, wait a second, every single one of these pathways could be affected by lifestyle. And so I was like, all right, well, let's write the book. And so that's actually part one of the book, where I talk about the 11 most promising pathways for slowing the sands of time, ending each with practical proposals for targeting them naturally with diet and lifestyle changes. So we're talking about boosting the anti-aging enzymes and hormones such as ampk, FGF21, SIRT1 telomerase, while suppressing the pro-aging enzymes and hormones like mtor and IGF-1, decreasing glycation, inflammation, oxidation, and senescence, while preserving autophagy, our telomeres, and slowing the epigenetic clock. I know these all sound like kind of fancy-sounding scientific terms. I really do try to break it down into easily understandable, doable, practical takeaways.
Okay, so give us an example. Senescent cells. What should we be doing to kill those zombie cells, in your opinion, and in looking at the literature?
Oh, yes. Well, I mean, this is an area that I didn't even I didn't even know about before starting this book. So senescence, just for those who are unfamiliar, is the accumulation of these so-called zombie cells, considered to be one of the foundational hallmarks of aging. Most of our cells only divide about 50 times before they kind of stall out, at which point they secrete these inflammatory compounds to signal the immune system to wipe them out. Unfortunately, our ability to remove these cells declines with age, so our tissues can become littered with them. And the ensuing inflammation can cause all sorts of problems. Thankfully, we can help prevent premature senescence by averting oxidative DNA damage, and potentially help clear them out by eating natural senolytic compounds in foods, such as quercetin, fisetin, and piperlongumine. So basically, to help slow this aging pathway, I encourage folks to consider on a daily basis consuming quercetin-rich foods, beverages, and seasonings such as apples, onions, kale, tea, and salt-free capers, as well as eating fresh, frozen, or freeze-dried strawberries, which is the most concentrated dietary source of fisetin, And then also seasoning meals with something called papali, known as long pepper. You can find it kind of like Middle Eastern spice stores. And that has the piperlongumine, which is also a natural senolytic compound.
And how about turning off mtor?
Oh, well, turning off mtor, perhaps one of the most important things we could do. mtor is an enzyme recognized to be a major driver of aging, perhaps more than any other single anti-aging strategy. mtor inhibition disrupts a panoply of degenerative processes, explaining why the mtor blocking drug rapamycin is the most effective pharmacological approach ever devised for targeting aging, but non-pharmacological approaches to the so-called pacemaker of aging enzyme include the restriction of certain amino acids, such as methionine and leucine, protein restriction in general or full dietary restrictions. So to help slow this aging pathway, I encourage people on a daily basis to follow all the steps to boost ampk, which is kind of like the reverse of mtor, which I can talk about, and try to stick to the recommended daily intake of protein, which is 0.8 grams per healthy kilogram body weight, or 0.36 grams per pound, which translates to about 45 grams of protein a day for the average height woman, 55 a day for the average height man. And then choosing plant-based protein sources whenever possible, because those tend to be lower in the amino acids we're concerned about, such as methionine.
So let's get back to ampk. You want to boost it. How do you do that?
Yeah, so ampk, actually the discovery of ampk is probably one of the most important biomedical breakthroughs of the last few decades. It's activated when we eat less or when we move more. Some food components, like saturated fat, actually actively suppress ampk, whereas others, like fiber, can boost it. And then there's specific ampk-activating compounds in barberries, black cumin, hibiscus tea, and vinegar. So to help boost this anti-aging pathway, I encourage people to consider at each meal reducing your intake of saturated fat, which is mostly meat, dairy, desserts, increasing one's intake of fiber, which is concentrated in legumes and whole grains, and then taking each of the following: 2 teaspoons of barberries, which again, you can it's like using a common Persian rice dish. You can find them dried at like Indian spice stores. A dash of ground black cumin, which is like 1/12 of a teaspoon of ground black cumin, and 3/4 cup of hibiscus tea mixed with a 1/4 cup of lemon verbena tea, also shown to boost ampk, as well as 2 teaspoons of vinegar, though never to be taken straight. We should sprinkle on food or dilute in tea or something, otherwise we can burn our esophagus.
So all of those things impact your cognitive vibrancy as you age, but so do cardiovascular things. So we get the panel back and your cholesterol's too high, and you've got problems in that area. So what are you recommending for natural remedies to help the heart?
Oh, well, indeed. I mean, what's good for our heart is good for our head, as atherosclerosis, clogging the arteries inside our brain into our intracerebral arteries, plays a role in the development of Alzheimer's dementia. Those with a total cholesterol of 225 or more have
double
20 times the odds of ending up with amyloid plaques in their brains 10 to 15 years later. In terms of improving our artery function, there's a saying, we're only as old as our arteries. Basically, quitting smoking, lowering saturated fat intake, eating a plant-based diet can help increase our endothelial progenitor cells, which are these stem cells that regenerate the inner lining of our blood vessels. By age 10, nearly all kids raised on a standard American diet develop the first stage of atherosclerosis, our number one killer, these fatty streaks. And so, having a normal cholesterol or a normal blood pressure in a society where it's normal to drop dead of a heart attack or stroke, is not necessarily a good thing. So we don't want normal, we want ideal. So the ideal blood pressure may be 110/70. And the ideal LDL cholesterol is a lifelong 100 milligrams per deciliter or less, or 70, starting later in life, and as low as 30 or less for those with pre-existing heart disease. Statin drugs are recommended for those with a history of stroke or heart disease, or those otherwise at elevated risk. The side effects include increased risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And so dietary control of LDL cholesterol is the first approach, which means dramatically reducing one's intake of trans fats, saturated fats, and dietary cholesterol. So in a heart healthy diet is a brain healthy diet, is a kidney healthy diet, is a liver healthy diet, because all of our organ systems, critical organ systems, rely on getting oxygenated blood, getting rid of waste, and so that's why improving the health of our arteries can help us from, stem to stern.
All great information. And some people may be saying, I can't write it down fast enough. This guy talks really fast.
That's why I write books.
And also you founded nutritionfacts.org.
Yes. So all my work is available free at nutritionfacts.org. Free. It's a nonprofit public resource. No ads, no commercial sponsorships, not selling anything. Just put it up as a public service, as a labor of love. So I encourage people to check it out.
And Michael, you're an MD. How did you get into this little niche? Because you're very good at it. When I saw you speaking at the conference in West Palm Beach, you have groupies. I mean, there were 100 people that right when your name was mentioned, they stood up and started to clap.
Yeah, that's sweet. Yeah. It all started with my grandma, actually. I was just a kid when my grandma was diagnosed with end-stage heart disease and sent home in a wheelchair to die, essentially. She had so many bypass surgeries at end-stage heart disease. You basically run out of surgery at some point, confined in a wheelchair, crushing chest pain. Her life was over at age 65. Ooh. She heard about this guy, Nathan Pritikin, one of our early lifestyle medicine pioneers. And what happened next is detailed in Pritikin's biography. He talks about Frances Greger, my grandmother. They wheeled her in, and she walked out. Though she was given a medical death sentence at age 65 thanks to a healthy diet, was able to enjoy another 31 years on this planet until age 96, to continue to enjoy her 6 grandkids, including me. So that's why I went into medicine, why I practice lifestyle medicine, why I started nutritionfacts.org, why I wrote the book How Not to Die, why all the proceeds from all my books are donated directly to charity. I just want to do for everyone's family what Pritikin did for my family.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I loved it that 100% of your proceeds from your books go to charity. Which charity have you selected, by the way?
Oh, well, it changes every year. So I'm a big fan of the effective altruism movement. Mm-hmm. And so there's wonderful charity evaluators like GiveWell, where they go around the world and try to find out where is one's biggest bang for your buck. So typical things are like providing bed nets to prevent malaria. In sub-Saharan Africa is a very cost-effective way to save lives, and similar things like that, where it's just like for a small amount of money, we can be heroes and save lives. Like if you saved someone's life, you drag someone out of a burning building, you would remember that for the rest of your life, having saved a life. We can all save our lives with, by donating to some of the most effective charities in the world. And so I'm honored to be able to do that. And so I'm like saving lives to putting out this information, and then can take the money and put that in to save even more lives. I live a very privileged, gifted life.
You do. So to keep your brain firing as fast as it's firing this morning, what are you doing to keep it going?
Well, it's eating a healthy diet. It's controlling one's cardiovascular risk factors. Making sure to, you have to normalize blood pressure. People are hypertensive. You need to bring people's cholesterol down. Alzheimer's, as I said, is related to the Alzheimer's plaque within the brain. So things that help cardiovascular help with cognitive health. Aerobic exercise is critically important to improve brain function, both normal and cognitively impaired individuals. Perhaps by boosting something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is also boosted through meditation, caloric restriction, reducing saturated fat intake, and eating high flavonoid fruits and vegetables, and rye groats, which are intact grain, whole grain kernels of rye, also boost BDNF. So basically the best dementia-deterring diet would be low in added sugars, salt, saturated fat, animal products, processed foods, high in whole plant foods, particularly greens, beans, and berries.
And you should be starting this at age 10.
Oh, earlier. I mean, right. But critically important, it's not too late. It's never too late. And it's not all or nothing, right? It's not black or white. One needn't make drastic changes. Even basic, common sense lifestyle factors can mean living a decade longer, not smoking, not being obese, regular exercise, more fruits and vegetables, right? It's never too late. Never too late to start eating healthier, never too late to start moving, never too late to, stop smoking. We really do have the power.
Mm-hmm. And what are your thoughts about the community that says we can increase our health spans? We can have a shortened time when we're really sick before we die, instead of a prolonged period. Do you think that is an achievable goal?
Oh, absolutely. We already know that. I mean, if you look at what's causing the most disability, whether physical disability like osteoarthritis or mental disability like cognitive dysfunction, a mild cognitive impairment, these are all things that we can largely prevent, and sometimes even treat or reverse with lifestyle changes. I mean, the flip side of the fact that lifestyle, about 80% of what we see in primary care are these lifestyle diseases. That's good news, because it means that, well, if this is causing the disease, well, then we can treat the root cause and prevent these diseases from getting worse at the very least, and often stop them and reverse them, because our body wants to be healthy. It's just when we stab ourselves with a fork 3 times a day, we may never heal.
That's a good way of putting it. Stab ourselves with a fork. But why is it then that a lot of people have trouble adopting the lifestyle changes that are pretty clear? In your opinion?
Well, it's like anything else. It's human psychology. It's particularly when it comes to food. Food is so deeply ingrained in our culture, both our families and holidays and business lunches and you name it. It's just like, it may not be as easy. It's like, if you're a smoker and all your friends are smokers and you're all it's just part of a social thing, it may be more difficult to quit. And just because something is bad for you doesn't mean people, who doesn't know that doing cocaine is bad for you? Why does anyone do cocaine or heroin or all these? It's because the kind of short-term gain they get, like, oh, this tastes really good, even if they know, well, long-term this isn't good for us, we have difficulty kind of making that, can we kind of discount the future and think, well, and have this very kind of short-term thinking, where it's like, if you think about it, anything you want to do in life, you really need your health, right? And so
it's the foundation.
So whatever goals you have, whether you want to see your, kids grow up, or get married, or travel the world, or whatever, you need to be healthy. For people who are, particularly for young and healthy people who've never really had a serious illness, we physicians, we see people, really sick in hospitals and realize how much it robs people of their independence. Imagine being in chronic pain every day. I asked some of my younger patients to think about when the last time they had a really bad cold. And it's like, oh my God, you're stuffed up, you can't sleep, your face hurts, blah, blah. Okay, that's a cold. That's like the least thing you're getting, right? That's like the least worst thing in all of medicine, right? Okay, now imagine, and then you can go through this just litany of horrible things that can happen to you that just take over your life, take over your psychic space, just limit your possibilities. And so it's important to think about your future self, when you're deliberating. Not just, like, what will feel good or taste good right now, but like, okay, I'm going to be in this body for a long time, hopefully. And so it's like, people take better care of their cars than they do their own body. They put in the good oil and the good, but look, you can get a new car, but you can't get a new body.
Oh, very well put. So you read the literature. How many hours do you spend reading literature, medical literature? A day.
Well, when I'm in research mode, it's all day, every day. Yeah.
That's what I thought. So in your reading, what is on the horizon that may help us stay vibrant longer?
All sorts of juicy stuff.
Ooh,
so
good.
My latest, one of the latest things, is actually taurine. So the seminal paper came out on taurine supplementation after the manuscript for How Not to Age was actually submitted. This important paper showing that taurine supplementation improves the lifespan and health span of animals. The question is, does it do it in humans too? So I've just recently done a big kind of deep dive, and in February doing a webinar on the subject on whether people should consider supplementing with taurine every day. It's something that our body makes, but as we age, the ability of our body to produce taurine tends to decline, so we may need to ensure we get some in our diet. And the question is, what are the best sources? What are the risks and benefits? What kind of dosing schedule? So that's something that I'm looking forward to sharing with everybody.
And taurine is something that is affordable.
Oh my God, it's dirt cheap. Literally a penny a day. You can get it. So you can get about a gram for a penny. And you don't even need to take a gram. Oh yeah. And you can just get pure taurine, one ingredient, yeah.
What are the downsides of taurine? It sounds great.
Yeah.
Why do you hesitate?
So there's some contraindications. There are some people that shouldn't be taking taurine. The biggest issue is these taurine conjugated bile acids. When you take a lot of taurine, you produce these bile acids that can result in increased hydrogen sulfide production, which is kind of the rotten egg gas in the colon, which can have carcinogenic effects. And so the concern is an increased risk of colorectal cancer with taurine supplementation, which is the number one cancer killer of non-smokers. But there are ways that you can mediate that effect, and that is one by eating high-fiber diets, for example. So high-fiber diets can actually counteract the butyrate, which is a postbiotic produced by your good gut bugs when you eat fiber, can counteract the deleterious effects of the hydrogen sulfide. So that's one way to go about it. There's another way that I'm exploring now. And so it's not, like any powerful thing. People have this sense that, yes, medicine, there's like pros and cons, there's surgery, but somehow natural approaches that have no downsides. But it's just like anything that's powerful enough to make you healthier. You can exercise too much. You can, it's important to really know the pros and cons. It's your body, your choice. And so you really have to have fully informed consent before deciding to go down any particular route.
So what else is on the horizon? Taurine and what else are you excited about?
I just did a deep dive into cold water immersion, these cold plunges.
Yeah.
So there's, it's purported benefits for immunity, purported benefits for mood and athletic recovery. And it's interesting, most of the effects really appear to be placebo effects. And so, you can randomize people to, a sugar pill and get very similar effects, and actually may impair muscle growth. So it's actually, I'm surprised people continue to do it. Although it may, certain types, so something called whole body cryotherapy may improve mood. Again, it may be a placebo effect, all in your head. But guess what? That's what mental illness is. It's all in your head. If you feel better, you feel better. Who cares, right? Whether it's a real effect or a placebo effect. So then it's a little less, But there's some, riskier things like, winter bathing or cold water swimming that have some serious potential downsides that you really want to make sure that you're actually getting benefit out of before, undertaking.
Oh, my friends from Copenhagen swear by that winter bathing.
Oh boy, people do. Absolutely. But it's interesting. So, for example, cold water swimmers self-report that, they have that they, get less, respiratory infections, etc. But look, they're also swimmers. And so maybe it's just the exercise. So they actually did a study where they compared the upper respiratory tract infections, which is kind of a proxy for immune function, between not just, cold water swimmers and people that don't cold water swim, but cold water swimmers versus indoor heated pool swimmers, and found that there's no difference. And that they both had fewer infections than people who didn't swim at all, but it was the exercise. Exercise boosts your immune function.
That's interesting.
And so, but there was no benefit of the cold water versus just the warm water. So those are the important things to do to tease out if you want these benefits. Now, look, if you like the cold, then there's ways to do it safely and blah blah blah. But but it does not appear necessary, at least from immune function standpoint. Although there's interesting work on cold showers suggesting decrease in intensity of upper respiratory tract infections versus those randomized to not do cold showers. So it's a really fascinating literature.
Is there anything else? New stuff that's
on and on. It goes on and on. Everything. My book has 13,000 citations. There's a lot of science out there. People should feel free to dive in.
Where are you on hyperbaric oxygen?
Oh, good question. It's not something I've looked into.
Okay.
I'm skeptical, but there's so many different. So I in the few areas I have looked into it for. I've been very disappointed, but it's like if you use it for 20 different things, maybe it works for 2 of them or 1 of them. And so you don't want to have just kind of, some kind of negative across the board. But anytime there's any kind of gimmicky, expensive thing, there's just like a profit motive. There's a commercial incentive to kind of, to present the data in a way that their really expensive toy would appear better than it is. And that may be true, but it may not be. And so you want to know because, you could be spending that money on kale.
We're heading into a new administration in our country. And it may be that Big Pharma sees some changes under this new
If you look at the stock market, Big Pharma is not feeling good right now.
No. What are your thoughts? Do you think things are going to change from what we've been seeing, status quo?
One can only hope. I mean, it's hard to imagine things getting worse. So yeah, we'll see. And so, there's been, talk about perhaps, cutting ag subsidies, which would be, right now, why are taxpayers making sugar artificially cheap? Why are we paying sugar subsidies to the industry? Like, why are we making, feedstuffs for livestock artificially cheap to make dollar menu burgers? Like, I mean, it's like if you're going to subsidize any food, and there's an argument we shouldn't subsidize anything, but if you are going to, why not make fruits and vegetables cheaper? Why not make our country healthier? And so there's all sorts of things we could do to build in incentives to make healthy food more affordable, more convenient, and kind of the default choice, particularly in institutions over which the federal government has power. Federal school lunch program, prisons, military. I mean, they feed millions of meals. And so there's no reason why, they can't have a huge lever in terms of making the food industry healthier.
3/4 of us are obese. And there's a reason for that.
It's outrageous.
It's our food.
Yeah, 3/4 overweight or obese, yeah.
Yeah. Where are you on toxins? And how important do you feel it is that we try to not harbor too many of them in our bodies?
Yeah, I mean, there's a big emphasis on detoxification. But so 2 things. One, we have a liver that detoxifies. I mean, we have a built-in detoxification system. So by supporting our liver, for example, by eating, cruciferous vegetables, which is the broccoli, kale, cabbage, cauliflower, it actually boosts our liver's detoxing abilities, such that, if you have a barbecue coming up and you're going to eat some ribs or something, eating broccoli even a week before can so rev up your detoxifying enzymes. You get less of these polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons flowing through your system. You get less of a caffeine buzz drinking coffee after you've eaten some broccoli. I mean, it's really powerful way. So we can naturally detox and, even better, not tox in the first place, right? And so there are certain foods that are more concentrated than some of the things we want to stay away from, like the dioxins and PCBs and, banned pesticides and these forever chemicals and flame retardants and on down the list. They tend to accumulate up the food chain, so eating lower on the food chain is helpful. So either eating plants is lowest on the food chain or eating just plant eaters. Unfortunately, as we learned from the mad cow debacle, we don't have herbivores anymore. We feed cows and pigs and chickens, millions of pounds of, slaughterhouse remains and, on down the list. And so actually the animals we eat were like polar bears at the top of the food chain. We're getting a lot of these concentrated toxins. And so, but there's ways we can reduce our exposure in the first place, which is really the best way to do it because some of these compounds have very, very long half-lives. Something like mercury, within a few months, you can detoxify. You have people eat tuna or swordfish or something, and then you stop it, and you can see the levels in their bodies go down. But something like PCBs or DDT or something, it's like you need centuries to get rid of some of these compounds. Although they are stored in fat, and when you lose weight, you can ironically get higher levels in your blood as it's released from your fat, and that can impair your cognition and do all sorts of terrible things if there's ways to eat. So you got to eat particularly healthy, high-fiber diets when you're losing weight, because you want to take those toxins, grab onto them, get out of your body. But yeah, no, not toxing in the first place. That's always the best.
Yeah.
And then there are safer ways to lose weight, and I've got a lot of videos about that on nutritionfacts.org.
Speaking of lifestyle and cooking, what kind of cookware are you using? Because you don't want stuff with those forever chemicals like with the Teflon.
You're absolutely not, right? We want to stay away from nonstick surfaces. Probably stainless steel is probably the safest.
Okay.
We don't want to use aluminum cookware. There's a whole long list. I've got a lot of videos on various cookwares and utensils. And ways to reduce our exposure to plastics, chemicals, etc. Unfortunately, I got to run to my next interview. I'm so sorry.
Michael,
but thank you so much, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. This has been such a pleasure. Keep up the great energy.
Thanks so much.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Cutting Edge Health Preventing Cognitive Decline podcast. Any information shared here is for educational purposes only. Guest opinions are their own. This podcast is not responsible for the veracity of their statements. Do not use any of this information without first talking to your doctor. Cutting Edge Health, LLC, is not responsible for what may happen to you if you use their information in place of official advice from a medical professional. Thanks for listening. Be well.